A flock of starlings is called a murmuration. The poet Mary Oliver describes it as a wheel of many parts that can rise and spin over and over again, full of gorgeous life. Each bird hinges on a tipping point inside the murmuration. The turn of a single wing radiates to the flock's edge. Within the aerial ballet, each starling is interconnected. Each has the power to affect the course ahead. New possibilities emerge from individual change. In a breath, the flock is transformed. By flying in a murmuration, starlings do not set out to create a spectacle of profound beauty. They are merely acting on instinct, driven by nature. The birds are separate entities upon arrival, but as their numbers grow, the swirling mass takes on a life of its own, one that carries the essence of creation. For those who navigate shifting soil, a flock of starlings may appear familiar, the living vision of an evolving dynamic. A suspended portrait of our ever-changing world, drawn by the wings of a murmuration. Flux, seizing momentum, driving change.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, new friends and old, to the marvel that is the Skoll World Forum. Have you felt it yet? Have you felt the surge in your IQ and your well-being that happens when you arrive in Oxford? Have you resolved to do something outrageously ambitious and resolutely positive? Have you made friends with someone sitting next to you at a meal or in a meeting? Have you summoned up the courage to talk to someone you've read but never met? You will. Welcome to 3 days of purposeful conversation, to laughter and befuddlement, clarity and tears, insight and energy. It is very good to see you here. I congratulate you on caring about important things, and I congratulate you on the company you keep. Your theme this year is Flux, the paradoxical, shifting constant that ensures we never step in the same stream twice. The idea of continuous flow and endlessly changing context has troubled and motivated thinkers, artists, and entrepreneurs for thousands of years. This week, you take your place in that tradition. The hard, necessary, continuous struggle to fit present ideas to future realities. And it's important work that you do, but I hope it feels like fun, and I hope you embrace and enjoy these days. But I hope too that you recognize the scale of the influence you can have and the seriousness of the questions that motivate your forum. There are people who suffer, and who suffer needlessly. The suffering world, as Hannah Arendt reminded us, is an ideology and not a reality. And it is for you to defeat this ideology. And my guess is that you'll defeat it by embracing flux. The drive to stabilize, to resist change, is the opposite of innovation, the counterweight of your energy. Your efforts to embrace opportunities, to think in unconventional ways, to be motivated by moral imagination, these are small steps in harnessing the reality of flux. Every major disruption in our understanding of ourselves and the world has spawned huge opportunities for entrepreneurs and innovators with the ability to see that potential. The invention of number, the provocations and consolations of philosophy and of science, the slow, protracted, bloody shift to insight from superstition. Galileo, Harvey, Descartes, Hume, Darwin, Einstein, Crick and Watson, Turing, and a myriad others have changed the world and made it somewhere for you to change further. Oxford is full of people who, particularly during these few precious days of your forum, glimpse these opportunities. And you are working at a moment of unparalleled potential. More capital, more processing power, better connections, more understanding, and events like this. And you are also working at a moment of unparalleled risk. The world we inhabit is unfair and unstable. Flux means never having to say you know all there is to know. But I do know some things about your first speaker. Said's new dean, Peter Tufano, arrived at this place on the Thames from another place on the Charles less than a year ago. He has so fully internalized the idea of Oxford that he's shaping and changing us for the better already. He's the first dean of the business school to be an established social entrepreneur. He's an authority in personal finance and a great supporter of your work. He is a welcome guest at the forum. I'm delighted to introduce to you this evening Peter Tufano.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Oxford University and welcome to Said Business School. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm the founder of a small nonprofit that's been working to improve the financial lives of poor people for years, and I'm around old and new friends. I'm also the dean of the business school here. And if you think about the business school, it's not obvious as you think about the spires of Oxford. What's the connection between a business school or this 800-year-old university and the bootstrapped organizations that you run? But if you scratch a little bit deeper, you'll find out that we share a lot of common DNA. Let me tell you a little bit about that. First is about values. What you do and what we do is very similar. You have to dream big. You have to be willing to take on challenges that probably don't make sense. And honestly, you have to be foolish. And I think we're all a little bit foolish. Entrepreneurs are people who pursue opportunity beyond the resources under their control. And that is optimism, or it's delusion, but we're all foolish. And we are invigorated every year by a crop of new foolish people, which are the Skoll Scholars. And they bring to us a new set of inspiration. And we're a bit foolish too. We're very entrepreneurial. So this fall, despite all expectations to the contrary, we launched a new MBA program in this school in 8 weeks. And that is a most foolish thing to do. Second of all, you need knowledge. Beyond values, you need knowledge. So I want to save people or solve poverty in South Africa as an inspiration. It's not a plan. You need deep domain expertise in order to come up with plans. You need to know things. You can learn that stuff on the job, but we think we can also help you learn it here. So that program that we just started, it's about coming to Oxford not for 1 year, but for 2. And in the first year, gain deep domain expertise. A number of you are working on problems around water. Well, it turns out we have a master's in water management here, and you can learn a lot about water. Some of you are trying to fix educational systems. We have 4 masters in education. Come here, gain deep domain expertise as the first step to solving the problems that you've identified. So values are good, domain expertise is good, but what's the third part? The third part is you have to know how to manage. So let's think about managing. You need to know about cash flow. You need to know about marketing. You need to know how to manage people. All of these are skills that you need whether you run a nonprofit, as I have, or a school, as I do, or a for-profit business, which I'm engaged with all the time. That's why Skoll, entrepreneurship, is embedded in a business school, because you need those management skills on top of the values and the knowledge. Finally, this is more than about individual institutions and people. It's also about an entrepreneurial system. So I've been studying innovation for about the last 25 years. It's very clear that we need to study success. And that's why we're here, to celebrate and study the successes of the current Skoll awardees and also of the past Skoll awardees. But as a student of innovation, I can also tell you that we need to study failure. Because as it turns out, if you look at innovation, some of the most important things in the world have been the product of failure. And it's learning from that failure that's most important. Just out of curiosity, has anyone in this audience ever failed? Okay, congratulations. It's learning from failure that makes innovation work. So if you think about this, a set of values about entrepreneurship, deep domain expertise, the breadth of managerial skills, the willingness to embrace failure, that's what you're all about. That's what we're all about. So you'll find, not right now, but you'll find students wearing robes, and we wear robes every once in a while, but underneath those robes you'll find energetic young people in t-shirts trying to do remarkable things. You'll also find some of us wearing suits. So welcome. Welcome, kindred spirits. Welcome to Oxford. Welcome to Said Business School. And welcome to this glorious Skoll World Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I'm a lucky man now to stand between 2 bosses. Peter is my boss temporal. That means he can fire me if I do a bad job. Our next speaker is my boss spiritual. That means I have to fire myself if I fail to live up to his standards. That means making a difference, being change, embodying our purpose. He is our inspiration and the reason we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Skoll.
Thank you for your kind words, Stefan. It's a delight to be here, and I appreciate all your wonderful leadership at the Skoll Center at Said. Social inspiration aside, you're our inspiration, and we appreciate the venue and the opportunity for us to be here. I'm very excited. Welcome, everyone, to the 9th Annual Skoll World Forum on Social Entrepreneurship. Flux, it's not just for breakfast anymore. You've come here from over 65 countries to share your wisdom, your insights, and your knowledge with us, and for that we're immensely grateful. This year, I draw inspiration from a gathering that will be happening fairly soon in a place not far from here that also attracts extraordinary participants from all across the globe. I'm referring, of course, to the London 2012 Olympics. As most will recall, the ancient games took over, the ancient games were held in Olympia, Greece, and they honored the Olympian gods of Greek mythology. Then in 1894, the International Olympic Committee came and expanded the games to include Paralympic, Youth, and Winter Games. And when we think of the Olympics, we think of the pageantry and the competition and the gold medals. But what really define the Olympics are those inspirational moments that dramatize the power of the human spirit. Swiss marathon runner Gabriela Andersen, so dehydrated and exhausted that she couldn't even walk, let alone run straight, but still finished what she started. The power salutes of African-American Tommy Smith and Cuban-American John Carlos on the podium in Mexico City, reminding the world of persistent racial injustice. Derek Raymond of Great Britain, whose father leaped onto the track to help him finish his race when his torn hamstring wouldn't let him. And a nation long divided at the 38th parallel, but reunified in Sydney, if only for a moment, as participants from North and South Korea marched under the same flag. That is the power of the human spirit, and that's when sport becomes a real beacon for hope. These men and women are international symbols of courage and determination, and these unforgettable images remind us of people's capacity to overcome huge obstacles. They remind us of social entrepreneurs. We all know the seemingly insurmountable roadblocks that social entrepreneurs face, and we marvel at their ingenuity and their tenacity. And while most social entrepreneurs would deflect any Olympian characterization of their work, I think we can readily detect some divine influences here. For example, we see Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, in IDE India's work, which has revolutionized drip irrigation for over 1 million smallholder farmers. We see Hermes, messenger to the gods, in Riders for Health, which provides transportation systems that enable healthcare for millions of people. And we know that Poseidon, the god of the sea, is smiling down upon the Marine Stewardship Council, bringing sustainable Filet-O-Fish sandwiches to 13 million customers each day across Europe. To all the social entrepreneurs and allied forces gathered here today, of course, we salute not just your godliness, but your humanity. One of the most enduring, important Olympic influences dates back to the 9th century BC, the Olympic truce. In ancient Greece, an Olympic truce was declared before and during the games so that spectators and athletes could travel back and forth safely. During the truce period, wars were suspended and soldiers had to lay down their arms. But can we really afford to wait until this summer to declare an Olympic truce? Are 16 days of peace really the best we can do? Today, the drumbeats of war are getting louder in the Middle East. Within months, or perhaps sooner, we are drawing ever closer to conflict between Israel, the West, and Iran. In fact, I read today that 69% of Israelis now favor a U.S.-American attack on Iran. We need an Olympic truce now to pursue diplomatic solutions as urgently as we will pursue gold medals this summer. And moreover, it's possible. One person who deserves a gold medal is Kofi Annan, who just yesterday received agreement for a proposed peace treaty in Syria. Kofi Annan has proven himself to be a great social entrepreneur. And just in case the Olympic spirit in social entrepreneurs still isn't abundantly clear, let me proudly point out that in the last Summer Games, social entrepreneur Jenny Bowen of the Half the Sky Foundation was the only American to carry the 2008 Beijing Olympic torch on Chinese soil. One legendary gold One legendary gold medal winner best captured the common ground between Olympians and social entrepreneurs when she said, "When anyone tells me I can't do anything, I'm just not listening anymore." Florence Griffith Joyner. Now, before I leave the stage, I'd like to revisit another old tradition, a gift to the leadership of the Skoll Center from all of us at the Skoll Foundation. In honor of the Olympic spirit in all social entrepreneurs, I'd like to ask Stephen Chambers to rejoin me on stage. It is with gratitude and hope that I present to our partners at the Skoll Center this solid bronze reproduction of the 1896 Olympic torch from the first modern-day age Olympic Games in Athens. Yes.
I'm not going to hold this throughout the evening. You can all relax now. Thank you, Jeff. Those of us who work in universities are very well used to Auden's joke that professors are people who speak in other people's sleep. I defy you to fall asleep during our next guest's talk. He has revolutionized people's understanding of data and its visualization, has made countless telling interventions in health and development, and inspired millions in his talks. He is a hero to those who believe in what he calls a fact-based view of the world. He is, and if you don't believe me, you can use your handheld device to Google this, a certified sword swallower. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Hans Rosling. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have some things here. Everyone understands that there is some sort of limit on how many people we can be on this planet. That's why I'm going to talk about population, about the world population. And I'm going to start with children. Look here. This shows how many children there was in the world when I was born here in 1948. There was less than 1 billion children. And what has happened since? What has happened since? It has increased enormously, more than double the number of children during my lifetime. The year 2000, when I started getting grandchildren, there were almost 2 billion children in the world. And the one who keeps track on this is United Nations Population Division. And be careful, because their predictions of the future, 40 years ahead, have never been more than 6 to 8% wrong. They're quite good. They're quite good. And they have now predicted how many children it will be up to 2,100. One of these 3 lines is correct. The other ones are made up. But since you are people of integrity and I am a professor, I will be nasty and start making a question to you. Think, which line do you think is the correct one? The prediction for the future. Do you think it will be 2 billion children In 2100, 3 or 4, according to the mid-estimate. They have a high estimate, they have a low estimate. But the mid-estimate, the most probable. Can I have a hand up for those who think it will be 4 billion children? Yes. Oh, yes, many up there. Okay. How many think it will be 3 billion children? Yes. How many think that it will stop and it will just be 2 billion? Oh, wonderful. There's a place for me in this forum. I won't give you the right answer yet. But we are going to proceed, and we are going to do that. I'll come back to the children, but now total population. This curve you have seen in many versions. In the medieval ages, very few in the world population. It was growing very, very slowly. And here, with the Industrial Revolution, it took speed and catched up speed and went like this. 3 billion there in 1960, and now we are up there, 7 billion. And many think it will continue like this. It makes sense, doesn't it? Like the line just continues this. But I know that this will not happen. I will tell you something about the future. And that's very bold of a Swede in Oxford to claim that I can tell you what will happen in the future. I know that the fast population growth will soon be over. That it will level out somewhere around 10 billion up there. And then it may continue to increase or go down or go up and down. But the fast population growth will be over. How can I know something about the future? Because what will slow down population growth is something that has already happened. Something has happened behind this line. And you must then know from where children come. They come from parents. And we have to go to the bedroom, isn't it? Father and mother got on average 6 children medieval age. Strange, you go to the rainforest, you go to all time, all continents, more or less on average 6 children. Many women, many more children, others much less, some no children. But on average 6. Why didn't the population grow then? 3 times as many in the next generation. Because the sad reality in the past was that 4 of these children died before they grew up to become parents themselves. So only 2 were replacing. This is the old balance. Many even today say that people in rainforests live in ecological balance with nature. This is wrong. They die in ecological balance with nature. They have lots of knowledge about the nature, and their rights should be respected. But there are few people in Amazonas because they are dying in a terrible rate. Then what happened? What happened 1800, 1850, when population started to grow? Did they get more children? Did they spend more time in the bedrooms? No, they continued to get 6 on average. Thing was that only 2 died. This is where so many Swedes moved to America and Canada. This is where we got to completely different population growth. Now, what can stop this? Is it child death? No, there's another possibility that doesn't require that children die. If 2 parents only get children, 2 children, and almost all children survive, we will get the new balance. How close are we to the new balance? How close are we to this much more wonderful situation when you get 2 children and they survive instead of the terrible past when most of your children were dying? Well, let me show you this here. This is a half chessboard. And on this side, I have the number of deaths, 4, 3, 2, 1 children dying. Up there, the number of children born, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So down here, the old balance. 2 survived, 4 died. Up there, the new balance. And just 200 years ago, the world was down here. And then it was growing like this, up the 5-birth lane, but less and less deaths. And 1970, there was in the world 5 children on average per woman, and only 1 died. That's when the population bomb was written by Paul Ehrlich. He got so nervous because there were so many more who were surviving. And what has happened since? What has happened? And we have good data on this. This is what has happened. Then the world turned towards less and less birth, and we went to 3 births, and here we are today. We are almost there. We have almost reached. The average number of children per woman in the world today is 2.4. And I will switch over here and show you in our beloved bubble graph here. 2 children per woman, 4, 6. Unfortunately, it's turned around. Large families, small families, length of life there, 40 years to 80 years. Those countries, each bubble is a country, color show the continent. They had small families, long life, and these ones had large families and short life. 1968, the world was very, very different. But the average, you can see easily, it was 5 here. And there were most of them survived because average age here was 50, 60 years already. And what has happened then? Has these one, which we called industrialized countries or the West, have they moved, or has the developing world, what it was called then, has that changed? Here we go, I start the world. Can you see how China moves with family planning to 4 children? They move to 3. They drag India with them. Latin America don't care about the Pope. They move there. The Arab countries here, they also have family planning. The classical is the Bangladesh. Look what Bangladesh is doing. That's the Islamic Republic of Iran, the green one, moving very fast. That's the fastest drop of fertility in history. And there we are in the new world. Sad HIV epidemic drags down some African countries here, but most of the world go up there. Some remain down here, but it's a completely new world. And once more, you can see that the average now is 2.5. It's impossible to see the difference between the Western world and developing world. And people say, oh, it's because of Mao's one-child family. 1.6 in China. Mao Zedong was never in Japan, as far as I know. 1.3. Neither was he in South Korea, and especially not in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the only place in the world where you have 1 child per woman today. There's something more powerful in the bedroom than Mao Zedong that is operating. What is it? What is it that is operating in this bedroom? And there's something which is not happening down here in the sad circumstances of Afghanistan. Parts of Afghanistan is progressing. Other parts, you know very well how the situation is. Same for Congo. So we have a very big difference, but most of the world are here, and very many countries have passed the 2 or 2.2 child line. That's where we get the new balance situation. So what I can show you here is how the world family looks today. This is the most common family in the world today. Catholics in Mexico build their future with 2 children. Buddhists in Vietnam go to the future. Hindus in India, Muslims in Bangladesh, 2-child families. Religion doesn't matter. There's no major difference whatsoever. If it's any, you can compare Philippines and Indonesia. Indonesia, Muslim, 2 children. Philippines, Catholic, 3 children. It is very, very interesting what we have seen happening in the world over so few years. And we now have... I have to give you the answer. The answer is this. The number of children in the world have stopped growing, and United Nations predict that they will not grow. We are debating peak oil, but we know that we have reached peak child. This is very, very important to understand. And yet, I told you that the world population was going to increase. How can the world population increase if there's no more children? This is quite tricky. This is due to an effect that we call the big fill-up. And I found a very important educational material at the Randolph Hotel here. We have this instructional material here. 1 toilet paper roll is 1 billion people. And there are 2 billion children in the world, 1, 2. Then there are 2 billion between 15 and 30 in the world. Then there are more or less 1 billion between 30 and 45. These are rounded numbers. 1 between 45 and 60. And this is my group, 60 plus. We are up there. So how come that it looks like this? What's the reason for the shape? It's not that these people have died. It's that the last 30 years there were many more born. And they had a relatively low mortality the first years. Here we were fewer born and a dreadful child mortality the first years of life. So these people here never existed. And what will happen now? Well, unfortunately, I have to inform you that the old will die. The rest will grow older, and they will have 2 billion children. The old will die. The rest will grow older, and they will have 2 billion children. And then the old will die again, and the rest will grow older, and they will have 2 billion children. Voila! The next increase with 2 billion people is inevitable. It's no way we can avoid it if you don't want to kill these people. So I get really concerned when I hear environmentalists who are rightly concerned about the environment, but they say that we have to stop world population growth at 7 billion. It's impossible. But hereafter, you can see when these dies, they grow older, they get their children, then there will be no more. It's the fill-up. From the year when you get 2-child family, the breaking distance for the world population is 1 lifetime. It's pretty obvious. If you have these sort of things at home, you can test yourself. You see that I'm not cheating. So where do then the people live? Where do the people live here? Where in the world do these people live? We have 7 billion people, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And here we have 4, 5, 5, 6. And we have 7 people. So where do they live? Well, in the Americas, there are 1 billion people. Yeah, it worked. I could throw it up there. Did you see that? Yeah. And in Europe, we have 1 billion people. And in Africa, we have 1 billion people. Yeah. And the rest 4, they are all Asian. They are all Asian. This is how the world looks. Every international company realized they must have their main office in Asia. Just by demographics. And what will happen the next 2 years is that we will have 1 billion more in Asia and 1 billion more in Africa. 2050 will be like this. Now, you're not used to having one figure for America, so I split it into North and South, 400 million in North. And I split Europe into European Union and the eastern part, and then you get what used to be called the Western world. Now, that's very tricky to display here. You can see here that I almost cut out Greece there, you know, and Sicily. Actually, there is no definition for the Western world. And when people call the rest the developing world, then I get really confused. Really confused. I have a suggestion for a new name for what has been labeled the developing world. I think it should be called the world. The question is no longer whether the rest will catch up. The question is in which way the Old West will integrate. This is the most important. And I will now try to show you this. If I go back to 2012, where we are now, I want to break this down and go into a little more detail. I mean, you can get into detail if you think what I'm doing is that I'm taking this 1 billion and I break them like this, I get 100 millions. For me, that's a detailed level, you know, with just 100 million people like this. So I do this here, and there you are. Now they are in age groups, so it's the lower age groups and then the higher age group, and I put them together, they look like this. You can see over here, boring Europe, same amount of people in all age groups, the number of children is shrinking, no future. Here the Americas, more or less the same number, they lack 1 old there. Africa, dynamic, 400 million people below the age of 15 in Africa. That means even if tonight Africa get 2 children per woman and they live a decent life, there will be doubling of population in Africa. And in 40 years from now, Africa will have more people than the entire Americas and Europe together. These are changes. We are just not used to them, so we don't think they will happen, but they will. Now, Asia is interesting because you can see that the number of children have stopped increasing here, but there is a lot of fill-up to do up there. So let me move ahead with this, and I will show you what you know will happen. The old die, remember that? The others grow older and they get the same amount of children. But look here. There's one less in Asia and there's one more in Africa. That's why the number of children in the world stays the same. Because Africa is growing, Africa is shrinking. Remember Hong Kong, Japan, Korea. I talked to a banker in Hong Kong some month back. She was about 40 years old. She was not married, and I asked her at the dinner, "But don't you think about children?" "Yes," she said, "I think about children all the time. It's the idea of a husband I can't stand." And that's a joke, but that tells you a lot about the future of the world. The old die, the other ones grow older, and they get the same amount of children, but you get more in Africa and less in Asia for this very reason, that the higher educated Asian women are, the higher proportion of them don't marry and they don't get children. And then they will grow up like this, and they will die down here, and then they will do like this, they will grow up like this, and then we don't know what will happen down here. The future depends on when Africa gets out of poverty and get 2-child families. It's on its way. It's quite fast. Ghana is today 4 children per woman. Mali, that had a coup d'etat, have 6 children per woman. Ghana is halfway between Mali and Britain when it comes to life and demography. So there's enormous diversity in Africa, and we don't know how that will. But the main reason for population growth is fill up. There will be a little longer life, and there will be some older people. I hope I will belong up in the yellow one there and be very old, of course. So this is what happened. It's not aging, it's not high number of children. This is more like where we are. So how will we understand this? How come that I hear people who say, if you save the poor children, you kill the planet? It's the most common comment we get when we work for global health. And it's not an ethical problem, it's just wrong. Because nowhere in the world do we have these families where you get 6 children and where 1, 2, 3, 4 die. This doesn't exist. The countries that have the fastest population growth today in the world is Afghanistan and Congo. Afghanistan and Congo has 4 surviving children, 1 dead, and then they have 5 children in total. 1 more die, they get 1 more. There is no way we can stop population growth by this. On the contrary, if we save the poor children, we will speed up the 2-child family. Saving children is stopping population growth. Letting children die is increasing population growth. Others tell me that, if they get rich, then they get few children. No, it's the other way around. The Asian countries get few children first, and then they get rich. There's so many preconceived ideas which is wrong about this. So we think that the fact-based worldview is quite adequate for the world population in the future. And let me show you, finally, 2 favorites here, what I have. Ghana there and Mali that catched our attention with the sad coup d'etat. And this is the world. But I drag them backwards. That's where Ghana was in the 70s. I give them trails and see how Ghana has progressed and how Mali is where Ghana was there. Africa is progressing very much. We have to view Africa as we do Asia. We don't stop investing in Malaysia or go to holiday to Malaysia because it's a bad situation in Afghanistan. We have to treat countries each by each. Gapminder tried to help with that. Come visit our site. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. That is some act to follow. George Bernard Shaw, who usually gets quoted somewhere, sometime, said somewhere that it's the mark of the truly intelligent person to be moved by statistics. You've just witnessed the truly intelligent and the truly moving. And now, we make great play here that these days in Oxford are about conversation, about the ideas that emerge from serendipitous encounters, about how the commercial is the social, about the necessary connection between human ingenuity and the alleviation of poverty, injustice, and planetary risk. And someone who worries about these questions all the time is Judith Rodin. Judith ran a great university and now runs a great foundation. Her engagement with social innovation, what it is, how to incubate and encourage it, grow it, measure it, scale it, is astonishing. The Rockefeller Foundation is committed to a modulated, subtle, and appropriate understanding of social innovation. Under Judith's leadership, they see it as growing from design. They see it as a focus on products, markets, and organizations. We are enormously fortunate that Judith has agreed to lead a discussion on all these questions for us tonight. Judith also tells me that she will join the list of people who can fire me if I overrun. So I'm now going to ask her to introduce her very distinguished panel. Ladies and gentlemen, Judith Rodin.
Thank you. I'm not sure. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our opening panel discussion. And thanks to Jeff and Sally for bringing us together in this extraordinary way and in this extraordinary place. I'm delighted to join all of you at one of the world's oldest and most important universities. Dean Swift, a former Oxford dean, called Oxford a truly great seat of learning because he said all freshmen had to bring some learning with them to be admitted, and no senior ever took any learning away. So the learning steadily accumulated here. We will need that accumulated knowledge tonight as we look to the extraordinary changes that are taking place in the world around us and explore not only the ways to survive these crises that arise from these dramatic changes, but to create new opportunities out of them through innovation to improve the well-being of humanity. Each generation, of course, insists that the change it experiences is more rapid and profound than ever before. But it is the pace of change today in the global economy, in our culture, in our climate that truly is accelerating and doing so exponentially. Today, Facebook has 845 million active users. That number is expected to reach 1 billion by August. Each day, there are more iPhones sold than people born in the world, and now you know the reason why. But the world in the next 40 years will add 2 billion more people. But importantly, it's not only the number. They'll be more technologically, physically connected than ever before. They'll be distributed in unprecedented ways, with cities swelling with more young people and more older people. Our rapidly globalizing reality feels increasingly complex. Everything is happening faster and faster. On the green line, you can see the amount of time that it now takes to make a stock trade, and the number of stock trades is the blue line. And when we look around, we see the consequences of this, that crises are rippling across systems and sectors and geographies, outrunning our responses. And while global systems create new potential for growth, they also have been accelerating inequality and environmental degradation, and that won't reverse without intervention. Looked at through one lens, these realities create daunting new challenges, but they also create amazing new opportunities. Fortunately, periods of uncertainty like these give rise to unconventional ideas. The Great Depression spurred an amazing amount of creativity. HP, Disney, CNN, and GE all started during periods of economic recession, and after the last dot-com bust, we saw a staggering increase in IP patents. The vast bulk of our institutions and individuals, however, are not equipped to deal with this kind of flux. At first, the impulse is always to look at the past, to turn to the tried and true for solutions. But I think we've learned that the solutions of the past are becoming more and more obsolete. So we have to understand that in order to adapt, we have to build in greater capacity going forward for constant change and therefore constant innovation. Where will we look for leadership to catalyze and foster this innovation? Rarely do we think of our leaders as innovators. And rarely do we think of innovators as leaders. In fact, it's hard these days to know what some people even mean by the word innovation. It's become a buzzword. We're bombarded with products that label themselves as innovative. And it's not just in the way we describe our products, it's actually how we describe ourselves. In 2010, innovative was the second most used term on LinkedIn, second only to extensive experience. But luckily for us, the incredible panel that we've brought together today embodies that wonderful combination of leadership and innovation. And before I bring them out, I just want to tell you a quick story that I think is appropriate for our conversation today. Over the past several years, villagers in a small Bangladeshi town had been struggling with the effects of a dramatic increase in flooding due to climate change. The floods were decimating their livestock, which were primarily chickens. Throughout the history of the village, floods were believed to have been punishment from a higher power. But recently, a Red Cross worker explained the effects of climate change to them and told them that they had to be prepared for more and more flooding. So the community began to focus on what could be done. And one bright woman hit upon the great idea of raising ducks instead of chickens. Because after all, what are ducks if not flood-proof chickens? So she got a hold of a few ducks, and not only did her family's source of eggs and meat survive the next flood, but she became a successful entrepreneur, selling ducks and their products to neighboring villages. Let's hear from our panel on how we can convert chickens to ducks. Our first panelist is Soraya Salti. She's the regional director of Injaz Al Arab, an organization that harnesses the mentorship of Arab business leaders to help inspire a culture of entrepreneurial spirit and business innovation among Arab youth. Her efforts have led to amazing, innovative public-private partnerships in education, reaching more than 1 million youth in the region with the world's highest youth unemployment. Soraya lived, of course, through the heart of the Arab Spring and represents real-time revolution, how young people in particular are using this current fluid political environment to invent and start and scale innovations. Soraya Salti. Roger Martin is the Dean of the Rotman School of Management. His research spans integrative thinking, business design, corporate social responsibility, and country competitiveness. He is an influential, deeply influential global business leader and business thinker. His video, The Power of Changing the Way You Think, which is a mini case study on Procter & Gamble, is required viewing for anyone who cares about business or innovation. And in this month's Harvard Business Review, really required reading for anyone in this room, is Roger's newest article, where he is arguing that the Malthus solution and the Solo solution, approaches to sustainability of each of them, must be blended and applied in context in order to achieve real progress in all sectors. Roger Martin. And lastly, Patrick Meyer, Director of Crisis Mapping at Ushahidi, an internationally recognized thought leader on the application of new technologies for crisis early warning, humanitarian responses, human rights, and civic resistance. He champions the power of a shared space for those who have skills to offer and are willing to learn skills to assist crisis-affected communities through the use of crowdsourcing and mapping technologies. Patrick Meyer. And I am the lucky one who gets to ask them questions. So let me start with you, Soraya. You live in an extremely volatile region with a great deal of possibility and a great deal of uncertainty. How can you and how are you exploiting volatility to foster innovation, to bring about new ideas, to create new ways of thinking, especially those that might benefit poor and vulnerable communities?
Well, all we hear is a thawra, the revolution, the revolution. Well, it turns out the Arab youth are connected, and that was a big assumption that we got wrong. So we thought that looking into schools and in Morocco and Egypt, that no computers, no connectivity, that it meant that Arab youth were not connected. But in fact, in 2011, you spoke about the 800,000 Facebook users. Well, the new users were being pushed globally, those numbers, from the Arab world with Arab youth ages 15 to 25 for one purpose: mobilization and demonstration, online and physical world combined. So after the revolution, our door is knocked, and it's one of our students that were in the entrepreneurship program a few years back saying, "You helped me, but you need my help now." And basically, he was a marketing vice president in his student company that we forced to liquidate. He went on to help us in Morocco with a website that he said he'll do pro bono, and now he wanted a contract of $15,000 a year to help us go on social media, because a revolutionary, he had learned all the ins and outs, had all the maps of it, who was the biggest Twitter user and who were the followers, etc. And now we were going to change because he wants every Injaz program to have a social media component. So number one, leadership skills. Since the Arab youth revolutions were taken hostage, how do we hone the leadership skills of Arab youth so that they can take it back? And it's just temporary, the current situation. And so what we do is start a leadership program, but now online. The biggest Twitter person followed by Arab youth on Twitter, Ahmed Shuqairi, videos on instructions to Arab youth across campuses on doing leadership programs, honing their leadership skills, but at the same time, community service and improving the communities around them. And so one session after the next, who is the biggest winner? The one that has the most likes on Facebook, that's 50% of your grade, and the one that created the most impact. So instead of reaching a few classrooms on a campus of 10 classrooms or 500 kids, now we reach the 30,000 students on each campus. And the most important thing is that there is no Arab Spring without an Arab education revolution. And for the first time, there's a wrinkle in time. Instead of waiting for education reform never to take place, we can now access students directly through these new technologies and let them be empowered to create their own educational experience and the skills that they want to see going into the Arab economies.
Patrick, you too have lived through upheaval. Give us an example of an innovation that you've seen born out of a time of chaos and flux.
Sure, and I think to put that into context, I'd be talking about humanitarian crises. And in a way, these crises are first and foremost a crisis in information, a crisis in communication, a scarcity of available information. And when you have scarcity, you also have usually innovation that follows, right? Scarcity drives innovation. And for better or worse, what we're seeing with these humanitarian organizations is that they're less and less able to provide the kind of information that's needed. And that basically means they're not perhaps as relevant the way they are today as they might have been a few years ago. So I'll give you an example that's very close to heart, Ushahidi. So during Kenya's post-election violence in 2007, the country was on the brink of basically going into a major crisis. More than 1,000 people were going to be killed, serious human rights abuses were already being committed, and massive displacement was going to follow. And I was raised in Kenya, and I was visiting my parents at the time. And I remember the government doing its best to downplay the severity of the situation. But at the same time, I saw bloggers, Kenyan bloggers, and citizen journalists starting to etch a very different picture of the situation, as evidenced and as reflected by the big data, if you'd like, of eyewitness accounts that were swarming around the social media space. So amidst this crisis, as Kenya began to slip towards what many feared was the abyss, we launched the Ushahidi platform. And Ushahidi basically means witness or testimony in Swahili, and it's a tool to give voice to the voiceless. In a simple way, think about the Ushahidi platform, the software, is a multimedia inbox connected to a live map. So within this inbox, we're receiving text messages, emails, tweets, photographs, as well as video footage, voicemails, what have you. So in Kenya, we set up a free SMS number that allowed anyone to basically testify by text message. And basically, we were receiving these text messages in our inbox and mapping them. And in this particular way, the crowd itself was able to document collectively and publicly human rights abuses that would otherwise gone completely undocumented. And what we see now, fast forward to 2012, is this Ushahidi technology made in Africa being exported to over 140 different countries around the world, including the US. In fact, about 2 years ago in Washington, D.C., the platform was used to help the capital of the superpower, if you'd like, dig itself out of a massive snowstorm. So what we have really is here is reverse innovation from Africa out of Africa, and technology born out of crisis.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Roger. You're an extraordinary and innovative thinker and have influenced so many in business and elsewhere, but now you're also training students. Jonah Lehrer has a new book called Imagine How Creativity Works, and he argues that the ability to innovate is a teachable skill. Do you think it really is a teachable skill? Are business schools teaching it? And how do we really frame, then, skills training, particularly to respond to Flux?
Well, Jonah, if you haven't read his stuff, he's terrific, and I agree wholeheartedly. And in fact, I think it's just absolutely, without question, you can teach innovation, but neither business schools nor the formal education system, I think, does enough of teaching innovation. And one of the reasons is an argument that says you can't teach it, which I think strikes me as an odd kind of argument. But the argument basically is if something is untaught, it's unteachable. I hardly think that's an innovative thought. But I think the entire education. If you think about your own education, right? How much of that education was about kind of understanding and analyzing and categorizing and documenting what is. Right? Just think about it for a minute. Right? How much of your education was that versus creating that which does not now exist? And I would say it's 95-5 in the formal education system overall. And so it comes to me as no surprise that we don't have as many innovators. Now, I think the social entrepreneurs in this room will innovate regardless of what anybody does to them or tries to do them. They'll just do it. So I don't think that the education system can drive innovation out of people who are naturally innovative. But I don't think that it is geared enough to that. I think it can be taught, I know, because we teach it at our business school, and the students love it. The students absolutely love to create and think about methodologies for creating that which does not now exist, rather than spending all their waking moments at business school analyzing, should I do this X that we already know exists, or this Y we already know exists? I mean, that's good. You'd rather do the better one of the two, but man, that's not where the fun is. And MBA students love when they're given the opportunity to do it. But I think it has to happen before that. We're now spreading out and doing a lot of our innovation training with high schools. And those students are also sort of impoverished on that front, and they love it. And we've already started to experiment in elementary schools. So you can teach it all the way through, and it's one of the lamest excuses I've ever heard that you can't teach innovation.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's stay with framing what context is necessary in order for innovation to be more enabled. So the concept of flux sort of implies that big societal fluctuations could really create a framework in which innovation is more likely to occur. But it requires certain behavior changes on the part of institutions and people. What kinds of behavior changes, and this is for any of you, do you think are most necessary for innovation to be fostered?
Well, at least in our region, the first quote that one of the top business leaders in the Arab world said was from Tahrir Square to an entrepreneurship revolution. And then our own executive director, who's right here from Egypt, she was talking to youth, 1,000 of them, all young entrepreneurs, saying, you've achieved the impossible politically, and now you've got to achieve the impossible economically, which meant that they've got to now go on and become, job creators instead of waiting for jobs. And what we've saw in the Arab Spring is a moment that we have never seen in our 10 years of working with youth across 15 Arab countries. They had collapsed everything patriarchal, from their home that even covered girls, 18, 19, 25, leaving notes to their parents saying, I'm leaving to Tahrir Square, see you when I see you, don't worry about me. And same thing for the boys, and 17 days later they were going back home, not as youth, but as adults, as equal adults. And the morning after was, oh my God, I've toppled the government that owed me a job. I've gone against my family, and now I've got to create my own job. I'm responsible for my own self, and we started to see that on the ground. So as we were going through entrepreneurship labs, where students with help from volunteers are trying to start companies that we're forcing to liquidate, they were going out and registering those companies legally. Now, what was most inspiring was the females. Well, the females, it turns out, we saw in 2007, our first team that won was Wa'd al-Tawil, her name, the long-awaited promise for a young girl out of Ramallah to win our whole entrepreneurship competition. So our business leader in 2009, Bank of New York Mellon, was one of the pan-Arab judges. So he was saying, I can't believe this. After the 3 days of judging, and we look at the numbers, and the top 3 contestants, female, 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 out of 15 countries. And he said, what a lost opportunity that Arab women are not part of the labor market. Well, 2012, and everyone is interested in researching Arab youth. We had no statistics, historically speaking. And the finding was incredible. Between the age of 15 to 25, the #1 priority for young women that age was economic independence. And so when the men, 60% of them were saying housewife, raising kids. So a big shift had happened. The grandmother was illiterate, the mother was literate, and here this generation of 15 to 25-year-old females are the 60% of all university graduates in the Arab world. Well, the title of the latest report coming out from Booz, and it says, okay, educated, ambitious, essential. Women will drive the GCC's future. And amen.
That's great. Amazing, spontaneous occurrences that really are behavior changes nobody could have imagined 2 or 3 years ago. What about institutions, Roger? You study institutions, so how does their culture either create or inhibit the framework for innovation, particularly, again, in times of uncertainty when they're responding to risks, which could make them more cautious?
For me, I think the big thing that we need to have a shift in to get more innovation, because you're right, in big institutions, lots of innovation is accidentally squelched. And I think what we have in the sort of modern big institutions is an overbalance of scientific logic. And science is great, scientific logic is great, but the problem with using science, analytical logic, is that you cannot prove any new idea in advance with inductive and deductive logic, the cornerstones of scientific reasoning. It's not doable. And so as the world gets, the business world at least, the institutional world gets more and more scientific, any innovator comes up with a new idea and they get told, well, you need to prove that. You can't. Full stop, you can't. And you have to recognize that all new ideas are only proven to be successful through the passage of time. Trying them, some of them fail a little bit, some of them fail a lot, you improve them, and they get better. But there is a view that says, if your new idea is so great, you can prove it in advance that it'll work. Impossibility, can't do it. And so that's what gets institutions in their own way. They'll say, gosh, we're trying to be so rigorous about innovation, right? And we don't get any innovation. God, how can that possibly be? Well, how can it possibly be? It's because that's what you're gonna produce is squelching innovation accidentally.
Fantastic. Patrick, you are the technology guru, and I think people have really been stunned by the viral nature of the Coney 2012 video. And it certainly demonstrates part of the power of social media to connect people to a problem around the globe. And yet, obviously, it has been enormously criticized as simplification beyond. But the power of social media is real. So how can social entrepreneurs innovate to ensure that these kinds of opportunities are real, but they do more than just create a media circus, and they don't simplify what are really complicated, important, difficult issues?
Oh, wow, thank you for reserving the easy question. Appreciate it. Let me try and be disruptive and answer that indirectly.
Good.
There is incredible power with social media, and I really like the theme that you were building on, the idea of institutional behavior either inhibiting or promoting innovation, and this idea of spontaneity as well, which is I'll wrap back up to that. But so if you look at that, within, again, bringing it back to the context that I'm most familiar with, which is a humanitarian space, when you have a crisis, you have spontaneous organization and response, right? But that does not come from humanitarian organizations, because these humanitarian organizations tend to be rather heavy, slow-moving, and definitely not as innovative. So what we're seeing, thanks to social media and the fact that disaster-affected populations are increasingly the source of big data in the humanitarian context, we're having a radical shift in humanitarian response, because originally humanitarians would focus on their own information and collect their own information and analyze their own information, but more and more they're not on the scene, and instead of that you have a digitally empowered disaster-affected population that basically shares information in near real time in a very multimedia kind of ways. And this was particularly true if you look at Haiti, what happened during the earthquake about 2 years ago. Massive earthquake strikes Port-au-Prince. I saw the news, and a few hours later set up a new Shahidi platform, and then got some friends to help me map people's tweets. There were dozens and dozens of Twitter users in Port-au-Prince tweeting about the impact, and we started mapping that information. And what's rather remarkable is that this map then became centerfold to some of the humanitarian response that was happening because of social media. And so what I like to look at in terms of social media, and you mentioned Coney, and obviously that's an interesting example, is okay, they use social media to speak for themselves, right? This was Invisible Children saying, we feel strongly about this particular context. with the LRA in Uganda and Central African Republic. What we did is turned around, and thanks to partners who led the way at Al Jazeera, we created an Ushahidi map to let Ugandans themselves speak about what they feel in terms of what their issues are. Is it really the LRA? Well, actually, more than not, it has nothing to do with the LRA. So we created a live social media Ugandan Speaks map that allowed people on the ground to basically speak for themselves, as opposed to have some external organization thousands of miles away sort of cast Uganda in a certain light, when in fact this is not the issues that they're grappling with. So anyway, I was a bit here and there, but hopefully that gives you some power.
Not an indirect answer, that was actually spot on. So this is one of those moments in time when we really believe that human and capital resources are underutilized, that there really is more capacity than is being used. How do we bring these underutilized resources together to be part of the innovation economy, part of the innovation society, when they are feeling marginalized, or underemployed, and certainly unheard? How do we do that? Any panelists, Roger?
Well, on that front, I'm probably almost more confident than anything else I can think about. I mean, I think I think kind of utilizing underutilized resources, we've got a better possibility of doing that than I think we ever have, right? And it's a funny sort of question for tonight with Jeff Skoll here. I mean, Jeff Skoll helped us figure out how to utilize underutilized kind of assets by creating eBay, and we've now got lots of kind of internet-based ways of letting people know other people know they're underutilized, and so I think the kinds of things you're doing, Patrick, and are just part and parcel of the platforms that are now being built, the infrastructure to help people around the world identify themselves as having capacity to give, and people being able to find that capacity. So I think we can eke out a lot more sort of prosperity and growth from just bringing up that underutilization of assets by having a better way to communicate.
Fantastic. Jump in.
Yeah, let me build on that. That's a great example of this in action was about 2 years ago during the massive Russian fires that really devastated large parts of Russia, hundreds of fires leading to some 50,000 people being killed. And for many reasons, including corruption, the Kremlin was simply not up to the task in dealing with this kind of the scale of the disaster. But amidst, again, this particular crisis, some Russian friends, colleagues of ours, activists, who had been inspired by what we had done in Haiti, decided to launch their own Ushahidi platform and started to basically crowdsource and map the needs of the disaster-affected population. But they did something else that was particularly innovative that hadn't been done before. Not only were they crowdsourcing the problems and the impact, but they were starting to crowdsource solutions. They were crowdsourcing offers for help. And in many ways, you could think of that as crowdsourcing agency, crowdsourcing positive deviance, because clearly the Russian government was nowhere to be found. And in fact, that particular initiative, within a few days, these volunteers sprung up and in many respects launched their own citizen-based disaster agency that was far more public, far more visible and effective, according to many, than the actual Russian government's own response. And what they were doing with this idea of crowdsourcing problems and solutions is they were, in a way, doing open source like Match.com for humanitarian response, right? If you think about it, right? There were, obviously, locally, there were resources to be had that could be connected, but they were being underutilized. And what you needed to have is a matchmaker, like this particular Russian I can't even call it a group, just distributed volunteers using the Ushahidi platform to act as a Match.com. And they were also setting up a call center to service the elderly as well. So what these platforms and technologies are allowing us to do is basically act as a way to facilitate self-organized action, regardless of whether the Russian state or other governments or institutions are there or not. And we know for a fact that the vast majority of survivals that happen in humanitarian crises have nothing to do with external intervention, with foreign aid, with humanitarian response, teams that come in 72 hours after the fact. It's all local. So if we can connect the local needs with the local resources, then I think we can build more resilient, innovative, ultimately, societies.
Soraya, you want to try it?
And the interesting thing in our region is, you know, when 70% of your population are youth, and those youth become the number one, critical issue or social, or you know, for governments, all of a sudden this is the top priority. Then, and elected governments are coming in and promising, you know, 400,000 jobs and 300,000 and 1 million jobs here and there, etc. That paradigm shift is critical, and that paradigm shift is the entrepreneurship imperative, at least in our region. That for these 100 million jobs that have to be created over the next 10 years, that there have to be an entrepreneurship seed planted. And for the first time, we're seeing a few governments immobile and unable to act and just appeasing, but a few governments really pushing forward and creating partnerships of private sector, of civil society and government together to start spurring that entrepreneurial spirit in youth. So for our region, it's about, you know, how do we take this demographic and shift it so that we create our own prosperity. My bet is that the next economic frontier is going to be the outcomes of an entrepreneurship flurry across the Arab world, empowered by Arab youth.
Fantastic. You know, I showed a slide as a joke of the US Congress when I talked about leadership and innovation, and often government is accused of inhibiting innovation, or at least not fostering within the way government operates innovation. You've just given us an example of at least trying to enable a change in government. How do you think about the governments of the future? After all, everything we do operates in a system, and like it or not, governments are part of that system, and they can prevent or protect or enable. So how do governments both foster innovation more broadly and within government foster the kind of innovative spirit that we celebrate here?
That's a toughie. I mean, as questions go, I mean, I guess
Sorry.
No, it's a good. It's a great question. I mean, I answered on a couple of levels. I mean, I do think that governments have been better about fostering invention than innovation. So they go and give money to scientists to go invent things, and I think that's kind of important piece. But I think in some sense it's the easy thing for government to do, and I'd love to see government say no, we have to figure out how to also spur that kind of innovation that comes from the consumer back to the organization. What do consumers want, and how can we deliver that for them? And I almost think that governments say, yeah, that happens, right? That happens once every 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, depending on your and that's all that we're going to focus on. That one time when we get consumer feedback, which is kind of up or down, rather than collecting on an ongoing basis, as in both of your situations, collecting on an ongoing basis and saying, how do we have to think about that? They're geared up to the electoral cycle as their consumer feedback, and that's not enough to be innovative. Like if any great company, if Apple or Google or whatever said, once every 6 years we're going to check what consumers want, or once every 4 years, I mean, they'd be done.
The election process, we accept.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. That's true.
Any other thoughts?
Just to borrow, I guess, from Anne-Marie Slaughter in terms of what the role of government ought or could be, is to provide platforms for self-organization. I thought that was a succinct way to maybe identify what government might be in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, there will now be a few moments while we prepare the stage for our closing performance. Eva Alion's recording career spans 30 albums, 5 Latin Grammy nominations, and performances at the legendary Carnegie Hall. Please welcome to the stage Peru's most enduring star, the Tina Turner of Peru, Eva Alion.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me on this Skoll conference. I don't speak English. I'm trying. I swear to God. Keep up the work good. Congratulations. God bless you. This is a song of my country, Peru. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. And now, as I'm very fast. Wow, I'm tired. Go ahead, maestra. Música de mi tierra, el Perú. Sí, señor.
Inga.
Visto por donde soga,
Enciéndete candela fría de cebolla, que mi vida he visto por donde soga.
mi mamá mi taita,
Cuida con la criatura,
mi mamá mi taita,
cuida con la criatura.
el niño quiere mamar, y va solo a su mamá. Mi mamá mi taita,
Cuida con la criatura,
mi mamá mi taita,
cuida con la criatura.
el niño quiere mamar, y va solo a su mamá. Encendete candela y
Que no se quema,
friete cebolla y
que no se quema,
encendete candela y
que no se quema,
friete cebolla y
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema.
mantequita caliente, que no se quema. Encendete candela, fríete cebolla, que mi vida he visto correr donde soga.
Enciéndete candela fría de cebolla, que mi vida he visto por donde soga.
Mi mamá mi taita,
Cuida con la criatura,
mi mamá mi taita,
cuida con la criatura.
que el niño quiere mamar. Y va solo a su mamá.
Sabroso,
Mi
mami.
mamá mi taita,
Cuida con la criatura.
mi mamá mi taita.
Cuida con la criatura.
Que el niño quiere mamar.
¿Cómo es?
Y va solo a su mamá. Encendete candela y
Que no se quema,
friete cebolla y
que no se quema,
encendete candela y
que no se quema,
friete cebolla y
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema,
mantequita caliente,
que no se quema,
you for coming.
Come on, that's worth standing for. That is worth standing for. Now can you feel it? You are now officially in the mood for the forum. And if anyone feels the need to dance during these last 90 seconds of me, do please feel free. Earlier this evening, I mentioned Heraclitus and his famous dictum that we never step in the same stream twice. Heraclitus is also famous for saying that the way up and the way down are the same. But I'm not so sure. I don't think I agree with that. And I don't think that you agree with that. I think the way up is more interesting. And I would dearly like it if you proved me right this week. None of what we do here we can do without lots and lots of help. And we are supremely fortunate to have supporters who understand the way up. Citibank supports your forum because they know the value of innovation, a more stable, just, and inclusive world. Thank you, Bob, Anibale, and Graham McMillan from Citi, who are somewhere down there. I don't know where they are. Please stand up. Please stand up. Thank you, thank you. Cisco, of course, are synonymous with networks. It's the power of the network, of data, of crowds, of Flux, that will allow the kinds of oblique and unpredictable innovations that you're working on to change the solutions to tomorrow's problems. Spend some time with Cisco this week and share your stories with them. Thank you, Cisco, for supporting us. And I'd like to end with a couple of very simple exhortations. First, I'd like to echo Hans Rosling by talking about some recent research showing a clear correlation between success at university and dining with others on a regular basis. This is not a joke. This correlation, dining and success, is why you should embrace this evening's dinner. You have a college to find and a correlation to go to. Or a college to go to and a correlation to find. And last, on a much more personal note, it's easy to forget in these amazing surroundings just how extraordinary your gathering is. You are 1,000 people engaged in important work. You should feel proud this week of that mission, and you should use each other's goodwill and energy and enthusiasm to change the world, because it really is worth it. Enjoy your correlations. Thank you.